Yeah.
Veterans Memorial Fund. And I want to remind everyone of the 35th anniversary commemorative events coming up this November. The reading of the names that will be November 7th through the 10th. A special reception honoring Maya Lynn. A special screening the morning of Veterans Day with Lynn Novick. And finally, our annual Veterans Day ceremony at the Wall. And with that, I would like to introduce Ken Burns and Lynn Novick, who are here with us today.
Hey, Jim.
Hi there, how are you?
Good to see
Hey,
you.
Jim.
Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Well, you know, we're live on Facebook here to our audience, and that mostly is Vietnam veterans and veteran family members and that sort of thing. So I know there's going to be a lot of interest specifically about how you treat certain aspects of the war. Before we get into that, let's just kind of set the stage here. You had very successful projects about the Civil War and about World War II, and now you've taken on Vietnam. What led you to take on Vietnam? And tell us a little bit about the journey you all have been through in developing this series.
I think we took it on because we felt it was the most important event in American history after the Second World War, and it also represents a lot of unfinished business. A lot of people think they know about it, but there's been new scholarship that has upended kind of our conventional wisdom about it. A lot of people have chosen not to deal with it, and I think we've gotten far enough away that our children and our grandchildren want us to talk about what happened. And I think we have an opportunity to recognize that many of the seeds of the disunion we experience today, the hyperpartisanship, were sown in the Vietnam period. And it maybe if we could unpack what took place then and repack it in a way that made no one wrong but everyone right, to listen to all the voices, you might be able to be familiarized with the new Vietnam War that would honor your experience, but also honor the experience of other people, and it might permit us to come together at a time when we are so sort of terribly divided.
Well, sometimes it does take time and distance
Yes.
to look at something as big and monumental as the Vietnam War that spanned over 20 years. So the way you look at an event like that 2 years afterward versus 50 years afterward can be very different.
Indeed, yeah. You know, your perspective changes as events change and as you change and as the society changes, as Vietnam changed. Our relationship with Vietnam has evolved. We're now allies and we have normal relations with them, and the Vietnamese are very open to telling their stories to us. So that was one of the things that made it possible for us to tell this film, was to get access in Vietnam to speak to the veterans who fought with us and against us and the civilians, and understand the war from their side, because so often when Americans think about the Vietnam War, we think about ourselves, and that's not really the whole picture. So just that alone allowed us to take some new, shed some new light on the story, and also the veterans who lived through it here, the American veterans, you know, where they are in their lives and how they think about what happened to them and what they did and what it's meant to them. Obviously that's evolved as they look back at age 65, 70, 75, and you know, I think the sense we have from many of them is they know their part. They know where they were. They know what happened to them. They don't really know what was happening back home. They don't know what's happening in Washington. They don't know what's happening in Vietnam, you know, except for where they were, the bigger story, and there's a hunger for that to make sense of this. So it's been an incredible privilege to try to sort of collect all these pieces and put them together in some, you know, this puzzle to sort of find how it all fits together.
Well, so the film is 18 hours, over 10 episodes. It took you more than 10 years to make. And I can tell you, I resonate with the comment you just made. When I was in Desert Storm, I only saw my tiny part, and I was pretty isolated. So what I've appreciated with what I've already seen in the film is that a person watching that may have been on the ground in Vietnam really will get that rounded perspective of what not only was happening there with the war and other places in the theater, but also what was happening back home politically, certainly socially. The Vietnam War paralleled other major things happening in our country, like the Civil Rights Movement.
Exactly. So the film is an attempt to put its arm around all those things. And because the war didn't turn out so well for us, a lot of us took our own narrow views of the war and we permitted them to be hardened within a couple of years. And so we had our set views on what it was, which has probably caused for many of us that argument at Thanksgiving over the dinner table, or the inability at a bar to finish a conversation about it. And what we've said is it's okay to not know. I lived through that period. I had a high draft number. I didn't go. I went into this thinking I knew all sorts of things, and I realized very quickly how little I knew, and it's been a real privilege of my life to jettison all that baggage and to start fresh and to just repack the whole stuff that happened in Vietnam, and it's made me smarter and wiser and more tolerant of other people's views that may have been different than my own. I can't even remember what my own views are now. We had no political agenda, no axe to grind. We were going to be umpires calling balls and strikes, and we've got everybody represented. We've interviewed every kind of American, lots of Marines, lots of Army guys, pilots and helicopter crew chiefs and doctors and nurses and POWs and policy wonks and Gold Star families and military families divided over the war. One son going one way, one going another. Draft protesters, people who knew from the beginning that it was wrong. Deserters even. And we also interviewed North Vietnamese soldiers and North Vietnamese civilians and Viet Cong guerrillas. And they all sound so much like our American soldiers, and our American soldiers sound so much like them, that they now come together as a little bit overweight grandpas embracing each other. And you'll always wish you could skip to the last episode in this. But Saigon soldiers and Saigon civilians, so everybody's represented. And we think that this 360 view will permit some real healing to take place, and that comes along with the real information. New scholarship has told us so much that we didn't know, and that will help us all let go of those stale, hardened entrenched positions. And you understand why, particularly if you fight and you give your all and sacrifice, maybe wounded, and you come home and the country's divided over it, you're just going to go someplace else. And we want this film to say, welcome home.
Well, Lynn, I understand that you went to Vietnam to do a lot of the interviews, and you just recently came back from screening the film there.
Yeah.
How was that experience, and how do you think it was received?
Yeah, the film has been subtitled into Vietnamese so the Vietnamese people can see it, and I don't think we quite appreciated we would be able to do that at the beginning of the project. So we went there originally to try to collect testimony and bring it back and tell our story from an American point of view with them in it. That's what we hoped we could do. And as the project has evolved, the Vietnamese voices have really taken on a life of their own. We've gotten to know them as people and all of their humanity and inhumanity and the complexities of their feelings about the war and whether it was worth it and what they paid, and their desire to speak openly and honestly about the actual cost, which their government has never really done. So bringing it back there and sharing scenes at the moment with the people who were in it, and also with members of the public and with some writers and film critics and historians, it was an extraordinary experience because the sense we got over and over again was, we have never seen this story told this way. We know our version. Like your story of Desert Storm, they know what the government has told them about the war. They know where they were. They know what happened to them. They kept saying, we never really knew why the Americans came here. And we were told that they were imperialists who wanted to take over and kill women and children. Mm-hmm. And, seeing the film, that's not right. We see the humanity of the Americans. We see how hard the war was for them. We see the suffering of families. They resonated deeply with the story of an American soldier who was killed, the Gold Star family, whose story we tell at great length in the film. The Vietnamese veterans and civilians seeing that felt such sympathy for this mother who lost her son. And so there was this sense of common humanity, and it can be a cliche, but it's real. We are all people under the skin when you get right down to it, and they are curious about us. And you know what? They're also curious about themselves, because the people who won the war really don't know much about the people who lost the war in Vietnam. Their story has never been told in Vietnam. So they have a presence in our film, and for the Vietnamese, seeing, wow, I had not understood how deep their suffering was and how little attention we have paid to it. So it's an opportunity for reconciliation and understanding and truth among the Vietnamese, among Americans, and then between Americans and Vietnamese. It was really an extraordinary experience, and we're looking forward to seeing the reactions when the 40 million people in Vietnam who have internet access will see the film starting on September 17th.
Well, as you said, the film first airs on September 17th on your local PBS station. They're going to have it airing Sunday night through Thursday night
Right.
of the first week and Sunday night through Thursday night of the second week.
And each episode is shown twice, so, if you go to bed early, you watch the first show. If you get in late, you can watch the
Right.
second show. The DVDs are available on Tuesday the 19th. It'll be streamed. The first 5 episodes on Sunday the 17th, free streaming, and then the next 5 episodes the following Sunday. So it will be impossible not to be able to watch this.
Well, and it's 18 hours, and 18 hours sounds like a long time, but it has to cover a whole lot. You have almost 80 first-person interviews to be able to tell the stories.
Right. But you meet dozens of other people historically that are either passed away or we chose because of the fact that they're still in the public eye, that we wanted to have them remain historical figures and not try to, slant the version to their advantage.
So it's a lot of perspectives of the field soldier, not a lot from the generals or the lead politicians that led.
We have a top-down view. We know what's going on in Washington thanks to the presidential tapes. We know what's going on in Saigon. We now know what's going on in Hanoi. So we do that. But the real firm bedrock of this film is the bottom-up stories of so-called ordinary people. And when you see our film, you will realize there are no such thing as ordinary people, as all of your audience already knows.
I want to just touch on a couple of things because there's been a lot of discussion of this online as you've been doing screenings around the country. So one of the repeated themes is that this is going to be another liberal leftist movie that PBS is airing.
We don't know where anyone got that idea, honestly. I mean, all we can say is please watch the film.
Yeah.
When you have seen the entire film, we really look forward to a conversation about it because by saying we're representing many points of view and what Ken was saying, we left our baggage at the door. We really did not have an argument to make. We really want to find out what happened. And you cannot fit that story into any political box. Mm-hmm. And one of the wonderful things that we found in the film, we tried as much as possible, and I think we really did succeed, to listen with an open mind to everyone we spoke to. And then we put them in the film and people are having conversations that would probably not be able to have those conversations in person. And so no matter what your political persuasion, you will never be too comfortable watching our film.
Well, we only have a minute or two left, so I'm going to ask you 2 quick questions.
Okay.
First of all, obviously we have the wall in the background, and having worked on this project for so long and it being so personal to both of you, I would expect that the wall has significant meaning to each of you now. How has your perspective changed about the wall from the beginning of this project to the end?
I think my appreciation, I came here early in the 80s after it had opened and was blown away then. But I think it's only grown in appreciation. I really do think this is one of the great places in America, like being on the rim of the Grand Canyon, that this is a work of art that is able to transcend the divisions. And we would flatter ourselves if we could think that our film, in its 10 parts and 18 hours, might just go a little way towards echoing what was created here, a space where everybody, regardless of your views on the war, and you'll see in our film just unbelievable section about it, and people from all the different stripes, and nobody has to worry that their side isn't represented. All the sides are represented. Coming there and finding in the presence of the wall the ability to let go of the walls they have built around themselves, whatever their ideology. So you'll hear draft anti-war protesters breaking down and crying, apologizing for the things that they said to the veterans. And veterans absolutely sure. One veteran who was not sure that he liked the wall, who now talks about visiting it, and it comes regularly, and how powerful it is. So within, and all the shades in between. So this is
a lot of personal growth, and a lot of healing.
This is an amazing story about healing in the end.
We were here today, and I was thinking back to my first visit to the wall, which was like Ken, very early after it opened, within a few months. And I vividly remember starts small and gets bigger and bigger, and just by the time I got to the middle, I was sobbing. It was overwhelming to be in the presence of all these names and think about every family, and I didn't know anybody on the wall through the course of working on this film. And I remember thinking, how did this happen? What happened here? Why are all these names on this wall? I mean, I knew a little bit about it, I lived through it, but I didn't understand it. We've had the privilege of trying to make sense of it for the last 10 years, and we've gotten to know people who know people on this wall. And having them explain to us what it means to them has given us a deeper understanding of the power of this place. And then, we've come many times, and our producer, Sarah Botstein, has taken camera crews here many more times, and we've been able to come too, and just watching people react to the wall and respond to the wall and relate to it from all over the world. It represents something profound about remembrance that transcends the Vietnam War. We don't have memorials to our more recent wars, and people come here to mourn and to grieve and to share. So we're just grateful that it's here, honestly.
A lot of stories lead to the wall with regard to Vietnam, but it's also not an end.
No, it isn't.
Right.
And our Vietnam experience will not end when your film airs.
No,
so
it just begins.
What do you
right.
think happens next?
What you want is for people to watch it, start talking about it, have a conversation. We're so lucky our corporate underwriter, Bank of America, who's been with us from the very beginning, more than a decade of support, is anxious to foster conversations. They're a bank that has a long history of serving veterans of all the wars, and they took on the challenge, understood the potential controversy. And while this is a controversial subject, the film is not. And it will be controversial only to people who don't watch it, people who've decided in advance.
Right.
And I actually, as much as I'd like to do something about that, I can't do anything about somebody who forms an opinion that doesn't watch it. But if you watch it, as Lynn said, in times you'll hear things that will make you uncomfortable, and in 2 seconds
right.
you will be going right on, and in 2 more seconds
right.
you'll go, wow, I didn't know that. And if you can handle that, then have we got a story to tell you.
Well, thanks so much,
Thanks,
Lynn Novick
Jim. Thank
and
you.
Ken Burns.
Thank you
mentioning
for
us today.
taking care of this very special place.
It is our honor. Thank you for joining us here today, and we're going to leave you with this preview of the film.
I thought I knew most of what was worth knowing about the war, and suddenly I didn't.
Something was happening that was profound, that was irreversible.
What was it all about? Was it worth it?
Smart people in pinstripes couldn't make their minds up about the war.
It was extremely traumatic, like the ground was suddenly cut from under you.
We just tried to believe that this was the right thing to do.